everybody, and welcome to Epac Quarantine Chat. Now, today I have very, very special pair of guests, and I am very happy to present to you Marc Robin and Curt Clark. Now, if you don't know who Marc Robin is or Curt, then you just turn this off right away and I don't know, go somewhere because Marc is artistic producing director of the Fulton, and Curt is a director of Maine State and
artistic. Yeah.
You've seen his work a lot. So thank you so much, guys, for doing this today.
Thanks for having us.
So much. We have a lot to talk about. It's probably going to wind up being a mini series because I have thousands of questions. First question: how you guys doing?
Well, I think we need to get paid more if this is a mini series.
Okay.
We're doing good.
0 plus more equals 0.
We're doing very well. Thank you for asking. And I think, like everybody, we're getting a little stir crazy, but we are very excited to do this today with you because it gave us something fun to look forward to.
Good. Hey, now my first question, I'm just going to throw this out there. I know I work a ton. Okay, I'm always working, but you, Mr. Robbins, work more than I. You're constantly working, going from here to there, directing, like constantly. How is it for you just to like come to a stop after all that activity? I'm just really curious about that.
I actually, I don't think I've worked as much as you think I do. I just put on a lot of pretend. But actually, I don't think Curt and I have actually stopped, because like you, there's still things you have to do to keep the theater going. And because this time is so bizarre, there's so many people to message and to talk to and to things to wrap up or shows to renegotiate. I mean, you're going through it. So I kind of think I don't know what I would do in my life if I truly had to stop, if there was nothing, if it really was, hey, like when you're sick and you have to go to the hospital and you don't have a TV in your room. And I don't know what I would do. So I'm actually, and I think both of us are actually trying to keep as busy as we're used to.
Right.
And we're also, quite honestly, it's sort of been amazing to walk around our neighborhood and to, not have to be, up at 7 and know that from the second you step out of bed, you're running till the end of the day. There's a lot more flexibility, and hey, I think we'll do this at this point. But I'm still pretty busy, and I like it. I like it that way.
Yeah.
You think I'm bad? He's the same way.
Really?
if we were allowed in our building right now, and it was his building, not only would he be doing his normal stuff, he'd go in there and he'd organize the shelves and he'd clean the lobby, and he'd shine all the crystals.
Notice I'm saying nothing.
My opinion. It's weird. It is weird to not have a schedule that is dictating, hey, you have 10 minutes here, you have 20 minutes here. And I'm kind of enjoying that part of it. It's nice to breathe.
It's funny you say that. That's what I thought of this morning about scheduling and not to have a schedule. Like, you still have stuff to do, but it's not like I got to do this and I got to do this really quickly because then I got to be here and I got to talk to this person by this time, and and it's weird to not have that, but it's kind of cool in a way. And for a lot of people that I've talked to, especially in the arts, I've realized this is like people are using this to reset. Do you know what I mean? This time to just because we finally get to step away from constantly being active and the brain constantly working. And this is a good time people are starting to reset and think about what's important, what's not important, things they would really like to do internally, like spiritually, things they like to do, and things about themselves. And I think people are, especially in the arts, taking advantage of that time. Have you find yourselves in that, going through
We're
that?
definitely writing more. We're writing every night. We get a little something done.
And there's also the thing, and it's a forced. It all depends upon how you look at it. Some people look at it as a forced situation. We're looking at it as a gift right now because as but many people probably don't. Curt runs Maine State Music Theater, which means 9 months out of the year he's in Maine.
Right.
I'm at the Fulton, and I'm always here. And I'm I get to have this much time in Maine. So we're always apart. One of the beautiful things about this is that we have the opportunity to actually see each other, just on a personal level, let alone the fact that we are artists and we collaborate together and, we have houses together.
Right.
But to be actually able to make dinner together and have dinner and put away the dishes, things that, we would watch our parents do and never realized, that's actually part of the process of having a relationship.
Right.
Don't even realize. So, there's some of the things that are happening on a daily level, that, preparing for dinner and actually cooking is replacing things like, running from this meeting to that meeting to this to that.
Yeah.
So
Actually,
it's one of the few positives in this really bizarre time.
Right. So we're going to get, first of all, I loved your announcement that you did the other day, and we're going to get to that later. But let's talk about some biographical information from you guys, because people might not know it, and I'm very interested because I don't know a lot about where you hail from. So tell me, when did you get into theater? What, the whole thing? When did you start, and what brought you to this point and to the Fulton? Mark, you first.
Me first. I'll make this really quick. I started in theater when I was 4 years old. I was Toto in The Wizard of Oz. And then when I was 10, I was Jiminy Cricket. And I sort of went the whole gambit. I went to school for theater, the High School of Performing Arts, and eventually went to college at a community college, actually, in Fort Lauderdale. And that's when I started dancing. Up until then, I was sort of a child actor and did stuff as a kid. And then I started dancing and realized, oh my gosh, that's what I'm so passionate about. And then started performing as a dancer. And then really it wasn't until I did the national tour of Bob Fosse's Dancing when I was 24, I think, that sort of felt like the quote, my big break, so to speak, as a performer, that then led me into doing a bunch of tours. And I realized during that whole journey of dancing every day, 8 shows a week, that I loved the process more than I was enjoying the performing part of it. So I started to become sort of the dance captain, and then the assistant choreographer, then eventually the choreographer and the assistant director. And the director, it's the path, and especially as artists, when the door opens, you walk through it or you don't.
Right.
I tried as much as I could to keep walking through every door. And then eventually, 29 and a half years ago, I landed a job for a million different reasons at a place called the Drury Lane Theater in Evergreen Park, where he was currently performing. And literally on November 27th, I will never forget it, he and I had a callback for the Vienna Company of Cats. And that afternoon, I had my final interview to direct and choreograph my first show at Drury Lane in Evergreen Park.
Wow.
And we were both offered the Vienna Company of Cats, and he was offered a show in Chicago, and I was offered the job at Drury Lane. And we both chose to stay in Chicago because we had an investment in Chicago. And I'd always also had sort of met him and thought, oh, he's cute. So I did that show at Drury Lane. And then eventually Curt and I together worked at the Drury Lane Theater for 13 years. And it was during that time that we started to branch out and network in this new sort of lives, in my new career as a director choreographer. Then I met Michael Mitchell.
Right.
And I met Michael Mitchell because I was hired to do a show in Phoenix, Arizona. And I was with Michael Mitchell the day he got the phone call that the Fulton Theatre wanted to interview him, which was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Then Curt and I both worked for Michael for a little bit in Phoenix. Then when Michael came here, he brought me here, and then he brought Curt here, and then we fell in love with Lancaster. A lot of people don't realize, they think that we moved here because I got this job at the Fulton, and then and because Curt was working at the Fulton, we moved here because we fell in love with Lancaster, and the potential of, a life here.
Right.
So we moved here, and then we continued our freelance, or I continued, my freelance. And then when Michael unfortunately was diagnosed, I stepped in as the interim with no consideration that I was going to stay. I'd already done that for 13 years, did not want to run a theater. But the theater that we worked at in Chicago was commercial theater. So it was really there for profit.
Right.
And as you know, because you're the king of it in this community, you basically started the arts in this community.
Oh, stop.
So you knew long before we did that this is a really special place.
Yeah.
So after I was interim for about 6 months, I realized I was sad that they were looking for a full-time artistic director. And then Harvey Owen one day said, "Hey, would you consider putting your hat in the ring?" So I talked to Curt, and he was like, "Why haven't you done that? This is what you want."
Yeah.
And because it's a non-for-profit, which means it's about the community and not about the bottom line, I was like, yes. And you sort of know the rest. I'm in my 11th year here, so that's how I made my journey here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm from Pecatonica, Illinois. Moved after college to Chicago, which is basically where we met. Lived there for many years and loved every second of Chicago. When we moved here, we did move here because we loved Lancaster, but it wasn't because we didn't love Chicago. We loved Chicago with every fiber of our being.
Absolutely.
In fact, I took off my Chicago White Sox t-shirt to put on my Maine State Music Theater t-shirt.
He cried the whole time he was doing it.
But we fell in love with this community, and once we moved here in Chicago, I sort of just worked in Chicago, basically. But when we moved here, I started working all over the country. And then 8 years ago, I got the job up in Maine, and now we've done that for the last 8 years. And although it presents some unique challenges because we're apart from each other a lot, it's also made us better in many ways, and we both love our jobs and love both of those communities. Brunswick is a stunning jewel in the heart of the mid-coast Maine. I like to call it the San Diego of the North all summer long. People come up there and they're just like, "Oh my God, it's so beautiful up here." And Lancaster and Brunswick have some odd connections. Bowdoin College is the collegiate campus that we perform our shows on in the summer, and there's a lot of connections between Lancaster and Bowdoin, and F&M and Bowdoin even.
Wow. And a lot of people don't realize, but Curt and I were working at Maine State. We've been both working there for 14 years.
Oh, wow.
So long before this position, we were working in Maine. So it's sort of, I think everything happens for a reason. Every path leads you where you're supposed to be. And so it's sort of, we feel very blessed to have two communities that we both feel so strongly about, and still have the Chicago community that still has a huge part of our hearts. And Chicago still holds a huge place in the pride that they have for what we're doing,
You're right.
We feel really, really blessed.
When I moved here from New York, so spoke about coming and falling in love with Lancaster. Well, the one thing I came down here, I was supposed to do one show and go back, and I stayed. I don't know why, still don't know why I stayed, but I think we all have a path.
Thank God you did.
I know. But what really, I think part of the reason I stayed was getting out of New York, born and bred New Yorker. I realized life could be easier here. Like, life just seemed easier here. Like in New York, I love New York, and I'll always think of it as home, no matter how long I'm not there. But everything's kind of a hassle, and so much work just to live in the city. And coming here, I realized life doesn't have to be that difficult. And, my sister had the same thing because she moved from Long Island and she went to Ohio. And, so she felt the same thing. She said, "Oh, it's just like a nice, different, not so complicated way of life." Now, Curt, you are now at Maine State, you're direct and you direct most. You're the artistic producer. You produce and direct most of the show.
I'm not the producer. I'm the artistic director.
Oh.
I have a partner. My partner is the managing director, Stephanie Duple.
Oh, okay. So do you direct a lot of the shows up there?
Some. I try to. We're also an educational facility. We bring in over 200 people every single summer to Brunswick, Maine, to create the shows. So the educational portion of what we do for our interns and apprentices, I try to make sure that we have different teams for every single one of the shows, so that they experience the different personalities and get introduced to all of those things, because our business, like any other business, is largely part of who you know. So if at an early age they meet all these different people at Maine State Music Theater, once they've met them, if they do a great job for them, they remember that, and then maybe they end up on the Fulton stage working for Marc here at the Fulton.
And many of them do. One of the things that's been so awesome is to go and spend a summer with Curt at Maine State and take their what they call their graduating seniors, because usually they're the ones that can come to work immediately. And I think almost every Christmas for like the last 4 or 5 years, we have had someone from Maine come here, which has been awesome. And the other thing that Curt does, that he'll never say this, is I think Curt's one of the best puppet masters that there is when it comes to artistic directing. To watch him figure out the dance of how this component of education, and then hiring this main stage and coordinating, because as I direct a lot of the stuff at the Fulton. So I'm just coordinating, quote, myself, and it's easy because I know my faults, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But one of the things that Curt does, and he has 12 weeks basically, or 16, I would say, 16 weeks, where he is getting a different team every 3 weeks, and he has to coordinate their desires and their efforts into the existing company, and be this sort of kingpin on top of it to make sure everything moves. We don't have that challenge as much here because we have longer runs. We're operating 38 to 39 weeks depending.
Right.
So for him to be in a situation to also be in the room as the director, which he does, it's sorry to brag about my husband, but it's kind of amazing.
And Rob Brock, if you're watching, you are the puppet master.
Yes, you are the puppet master.
I'm more of a babysitter. No, we have a lot of fantastic directors that work at Maine State, just like the Fulton does. Donna Drake, Mark Martino, some fantastic people that, and also musical directors, fantastic musical directors, just like here at the Fulton. And that's my goal, is for the apprentices and interns, along with our union company, to meet all of those different people and get to know each other and build that show together. You were primarily, forgive me if I'm wrong, but were you primarily an actor before all this, or yes?
Do you use that? Do you prefer this to? What's about
depends
that?
on the day, Ed. Depends on the day. No, seriously. This year at the Fulton, I played Captain Hook in Peter Pan.
Yeah.
And during rehearsal, I remember thinking to myself, "Oh my God, I can't do this anymore." Mm-hmm. And then halfway through the run of the show, I was like, "Oh my God, I love doing this again." You know what I mean? It's hard. It's hard to go back and forth. Every now and then at Maine State, I will do a show, but it's very tough. It's very tough to end the show at 11:30 at night and then be back sitting at your desk at 8:15 in the morning. It's tough.
You know that. You've been in a lot of your shows, at Epac, and I've thought to myself, how do you do that? How do you keep up that schedule? How do you possibly, star in a show, especially in drag, and then wake up the next day, run your company? I mean, it's amazing. It's really astonishing.
A lot of sport, and my company isn't that big, so I can sleep in the mornings.
The other thing that
part is learning lines. I can't learn lines anymore. I think
the other thing that he's not saying is, even though he was an actor, for the 13 years that we ran the Drury Lane, even though I was quote unquote in a titled position, the producer at Drury Lane, John Lazara, had a relationship with Curt because Curt was actually helping him manage many parts of the theater, because Curt is just smart that way. Mm-hmm. And when it was obvious that there was a position that was available, and Curt still wanted and was very passionate about continuing his performance career, even though, quote unquote, there was one position. It really was the two of us. There wasn't I don't think there was a single decision that I made that we didn't do together. Seasons, you know, when we talked about seasons, when we talked about budgets, you know, so at the point that this opportunity came up for him at Maine State, he'd actually done every single thing. He had just, you know, hadn't had the opportunity to actually be in a position to say, this is what I want, versus, hey, we before were like trying to coordinate what a producer wanted.
Right.
And it's pretty impressive to watch it happen.
Yeah. Now, I want to talk about, because it's a huge topic, I want to talk about the renovations that are currently underway at the Fulton. And before we get into that, though, I want to say something, and I'm not blowing smoke. I don't blow smoke. But, I mean, I've been here a long time. I've worked at the Fulton under different regimes. And what you have done with that theater, I mean, when I worked there back, you know, it was nice, but it was, I don't want to put anybody down, but it was sort of content to be what it was. It was this in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, this theater with a small, that did community theater, and then they also had a small professional company, and it was all very, very nice. But what you managed to do, where you have brought this, it's beyond the building. The vision and the concentration and the work that you have put in to where the Fulton is now, reputation-wise, producing-wise, nobody would have thought that back in the day. Like, nobody would have thought that was possible. You have done the impossible for that theater, and and I know this being in the business, a sheer force of will. Because a lot of this business is just force. You know, they always say, you know, you make your own jobs in the theater, right? You don't wait for somebody to give you a job to make your job. And it's true. And you sheer willpower, you have created something that's would be unheard of 10, 15 years ago. Nobody thought. And congratulations on that.
I live with him, Ed. It is sheer force of will.
It's sheer force of will. I know. And where you have gone with that theater, Mark, is just incredible. It's really incredible.
Bless you.
So talk to me now, and if people don't know, like in detail about the renovations, because you've already started. You had some renovations.
Absolutely.
I mean, the theater was renovated. Do you remember what year it was the renovation on that theater?
1996.
1996 was the first renovation, right? Where they put in chairs for like modern people. Oh my God, the chairs used to be so uncomfortable. And backstage, were you ever in before the 96 renovation?
No.
It was pretty scary. That backstage was pretty scary.
My first show was Evita in 2000.
Oh, I remember that. Yes, I remember that. It's funny, in theater, we measure our lives by the shows we do.
We do it all the time.
I know.
We're like, when was that? Well, I think it was between Music Man and Young Frankenstein.
So tell me about the renovations that are underway right now. I know there are a lot of them.
Before I do that, I have to say thank you for your very kind words. And it is sheer force of will, but it is also building on the shoulders of the people that were before me.
Yes.
You know, I'm going to blow smoke right back at you, even though I don't have to. I came here being completely aware that the theater scene in Lancaster was originated and founded by you. I will never forget Michael Mitchell telling me, hey, we're going to go to Epac. Now, I was in rehearsals for Evita. I had no idea what Epac was. I didn't even know what Lancaster was. I got off a plane. I came to the Fulton. I marveled when I walked in the room and went, oh my God, I'm going to direct a show here. This is amazing. And during my rehearsal process is when he took me to see my first show and meet you. And in the car, Michael talked to me about you and said, listen, you're about to meet, and this was his exact words, the man who makes all of this possible. And you were surrounded by people. You had all these people around you. We were outside, and he introduced me to you, and he said, you know, Ed, this is our guest director, Mark, and you hugged me. And I was like, oh my God, to come to a community where there is an artist who's being introduced to another artist who is a guest director, and to be hugged first, told me everything I needed to know about you as a human, and about the community that I was coming to. And it's never gone, you know, it never leaves my mind that you and Kathleen before Michael and Michael all laid the groundwork along with this.
Clemson, let's not forget Gene Clemson, who
And,
started.
and I was gonna say,
our
along
community
with
to your back.
the educators and Barry Kornhauser and everybody that put all the pieces in place for the Fulton to exist.
Mm-hmm.
When I came along, I just had big dreams of, hey, I would love someday to see the art match the grandeur of the building, because you will know this, you'll understand this. When I started, everybody came to the Fulton because the building was so pretty. And
Yes.
oh, there's a show happening.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and my whole drive has just been to get to the point where people are coming for the art.
Right.
And there's a beautiful theater that's wrapping it,
Yeah.
to try to combine the passions of both. So because our community, many of whom support Epac the way that, you know, we have the same relationships.
Right.
So I'm totally blessed, and the fact that we're being allowed to do it and being supported to do it, and in the last, you know, especially in the last 3+ years, to have the kind of talent and to have the kind of being able to get the rights and the titles, it's all a big collaboration, and we're really honored. So that leads into the campaign, you know, that leads into the building. As we've grown, you know, we have, you know, we went from playing to 55,000 people a year to, you know, this past season, 180,000 people. You know, and in the old days, you know, if you have 55,000 people throughout the whole year, and you have a lobby that can accommodate 250 of them comfortably, and then you go to, you know, 180,000 plus, and half of your audience has to stay in the theater because they can't, you know what I'm talking about, they can't get out.
Yeah.
That really, you know, that along with a broken air conditioner,
That's a problem.
that's from started the campaign conversations. But the, you know, to cut this short, the campaign and the renovations is to turn the theater into what it feels like it's becoming destined to be, which is not just a theater, but a part of a performing arts complex. So it's not just the Fulton main stage. And as you know, we have the Groff series upstairs. You know, we'll have, when we're done, we'll have the ability to gather through the arts in a space that has 75 people, a space that has 150, a space that has 250, and then the main stage, which is, you know, 650. So that the Fulton property, you know, the Performing Arts Center itself would be able to then gather even other arts organizations, so that, you know, the Fulton main stage has our main stage, but, you know, there's a servant stage show that's happening in the 250-seat theater, you know, and there's an Epac, you know, a thing that's happening in the 75-seat theater, because we, you know, it's to make the Fulton a center of downtown Lancaster that can bring the arts as it coexists with the Ware Center next door, and Rob Brock, you know, and the Puppet Theater around the corner, and the rest of the arts organizations, because as you know, you and I have had many conversations about this. You know, the Fulton isn't here to compete with anybody. The Fulton is here to hopefully just give people an option to leave their home, as I would want them to do to go to your theater or any others. And so it's a little project, $30 million, just a little. And we're so close. We're so close. This pandemic is obviously going to, you know, prove challenging for us, but we're committed to keep going. And it's in 2 phases. Phase 1 was everything that was on King Street, because the governor and the Arts Council here in Pennsylvania believed in the project so much that, as you know, they gave us a gift from the Redevelopment Assistance Capital Program, the RACP program, to give us $4 million. And the corridor on King Street, which was a huge restoration for the community outside of the arts, really appealed to that part of the process. So we focused on phase 1, which was King Street. Right. So there's now, we're in the process of refacing all of that to bring it back to what it was in the 1850s when it was originally built. We now have 16 one-bedroom or studio apartments for our guest artists. We have bust open at all of stage right. So you actually have more space stage right now than we had stage left. And for those people that have no idea what I'm talking about, we never had a stage right. The building
that happened
This is
during
how you
Peter
waited
Pan.
on that side.
I know, it's exciting. The reality is that happened during Peter Pan. So we opened Peter Pan with the wall on stage right, the same wall that has always been there. And then halfway through Peter Pan, we had all of stage right to mess around in. And the day that it happened, I remember getting stage right for the first time, and it was like, wait a minute, you know, and everyone was just running around over there having a great time. The ghosts were happy that
The ghosts
day.
are very happy. So when you go off stage right now, Ed, if you go off stage right and then turn left, there's yet another 2-story room that is a new chamber theater that'll seat 75, that can open up to be an extension of stage right. So like for Cinderella, we can actually build a life-size coach and just put it there and not have to worry about, you know, where can we do this? So all of that is going to help improve the landscape and the architecture of downtown. It'll allow us to bring in and house right on King Street 16 artists, which will also help the economic impact of downtown.
Right.
Just from our artist point of view, and give us more places to gather. So that project's done. It took about 1.5 years, and that's done. So we are now building the phase 2, which is the thing our audiences will be most excited about. The new lobbies, 27 new bathrooms. You know,
On the
producers.
first floor?
What?
On the ground level?
On the first floor, right.
Oh, good.
With a transgender bathroom.
Oh,
and then a new producer circle lounge that houses 50 people for private events, and it'll be a donor benefit. And then obviously the biggest feature of the new building is Castagna Hall, which is another 2.5-story, 250, we can seat 250 people, completely open, rehearsal room, development room, performance space, you know, rentable room for weddings, function room. So we'll have the Castagna Hall, which is the 250 space. We'll
and
have
that's in the theater proper now?
Just off the theater.
Just off the theater, okay.
Yeah. And then we'll also have enough dressing rooms to accommodate over 50 actors on the first floor, new administrative offices, new boardroom. So it's a lot. It really
Donor
is.
lounge.
Donor lounge. We're literally turning the building into a complex, an arts complex. And phase 2 began and was looking to be done in late fall, you know, like October, November. With what's happening now, obviously we've stopped, so we'll probably push it more into the January phase. But it's pretty exciting, and it's and I have to take this opportunity to thank everybody, you know, from the person who's given us, you know, $10 to some of our amazing donors for the opportunity to even be able to say out loud what I just said to you. So
Wow.
pretty exciting. And you have to come and see it.
Oh, please, yes. And is there the Water Street? There's going to be another building there, or
So you know where the education building is?
Yes, yes.
So that education building, the first 2 floors are being combined into the new lobby.
Got it.
And the back of the education building has been lopped off where the new 250 seat space will go. So it's still all on our property line.
Okay.
But Grant Street, which separates us from Ware Center, will now be the only road that goes there. The road that used to go through our administrative offices and the education building is now a 3-story glass tower.
Wow. Is it so how many performance spaces are you going to have?
4.
4. Wow. That's incredible. Are you going to move the Grop series out of the top floor into one of the other spaces?
No, yes. The idea with the Grop series has always been to build a large enough subscription base that would allow us to do bigger shows by taking the Grop series and putting the size of the show in the space it works the best in. So right now we have just the Grop, we just have the, you know, the 150 seat space. But if we wanted to put it in a bigger space, we could now move the Groff series or that show to the Castagna Hall or to the Chamber Theater or to the main stage. You know, if there was a title or if there was a time that, you know, it really grew enough, we could bring that downstairs. So we will always have the Tell Studio Theater, but the Groff series in that studio might bounce around.
Wow. Wow. Oh, wonderful. And when is your hopeful deadline for all this to be completed?
It was December 1st. Now because of the delay, you know, it could be January, it could be February, you know, like everything else, you know, even with, you know, with what Curt's dealing with in his theater and what you are with yours, we have no answers.
Right.
You know, people are like, hey, when are we going to see it? I was like, well, as soon as we can gather and breathe on each other.
So I haven't been downtown in a while. So is that glass tower there? Have they started that building in the education center?
The steel is there. The steel is there. You can see what it's going to be. You can see the rooms. You can see all of that, but there's no glass yet. No.
Okay.
We have the front part of the steel work, and one of the quote retaining walls is done.
Wow.
The second retaining wall was in the process of being poured when the shutdown happened.
So that's going to look, the way you're describing it, that's going to look beautiful next to the Ware Center. It's all going to have the same sort of feel to it. The
Right.
Yeah, it's going to look.
And that's the plan. That's been the plan. You know, Wendy Tippett's architects, who worked very closely with Richard Levengood, who did all the renovations in the 90s. You know, we've had a lot of conversations about, we want to make sure that we're maintaining the downtown integrity so it doesn't look like, oh, here's us and here's everybody else.
Right.
So there's been a lot of conversations about trying to make sure that our audiences and our community, when they drive down the street, feel like there's been a unified conversation so that they can take their friends and neighbors who've never been here before and drive them down the street and go, look what we're a part of. You know, be proud of us. We work together.
Right.
Being in Brunswick 9 months out of the year, Ed, I have sort of a unique perspective on the whole project. And it's been very fun over the last like 3 to 4 years, seeing the very early stages of design and planning, and then watching it unfold. I'm gone for long enough periods of time that when I come back, my eyes go ooga. And we also do quite a few trips back and forth. The Fulton sends trips up to us, and Maine State sends trips down here. And I have a number of board members and donors and people that have come to Lancaster, and every time they come, it just makes me so happy to hear them say, oh my God, I can't believe what they're doing. I can't believe what they're accomplishing. And even more so, the restaurant scene in downtown Brunswick, what's happened down there because of how many people are now coming to the Fulton is just, it's inspirational. And when we walk into one of the restaurants and you need a reservation on a show night or you can't get in, that's a beautiful problem to have. Josephine's, the new restaurant where Cars used to be, Press Room, all of them, it's just so fun to see them all full and to be able to introduce my Brunswick audience to this beautiful Lancaster thing. And of course, the reverse happens as well. When Lancaster goes to Brunswick, they're all like, "Oh my God, I love it!" So,
yeah,
I mean, like even downtown with restaurants. Like when I did Hairspray for you guys, like when people would come to see me, I couldn't get into a restaurant. I would be like, "We can't eat anywhere." It's like it's a pack, and that is new too. Because I remember back in the '80s when I first moved here, the whole downtown is different. It's completely a different city than it was back in '86, '87. I remember there was no place to go on Sunday to eat, you know. It was it's amazing. It's amazing. So I can't wait to see all this. I think it's going to be incredible. Now, one thing
I just want to be with you when I want to see your face when you walk stage right.
Oh my God, yes, I'll cry.
Just the fact that there is a stage right.
That there is a stage right. Is there going to be a restaurant in the theater?
No, all of King Street, the King Street corridor, the lower level was all going to be retail. But we had a lot of conversations, and I felt really strongly that if we opened up a restaurant, then basically we're in competition with the very people that support us all the time that have allowed us to get where we are. And so much of that has been the restaurant business. Why would we compete? We'll have an expanded lobby with more choices at the show,
Right.
but we are not going to ever seek, well, currently we're not seeking to ever enter into a competition phase with anybody.
So let's jump to this year and what we're all dealing with. So Curt, are you going to have a season this year? Summer season?
Decision coming on that very soon. You know, it obviously we're going to at a very minimum we're going to have changes, but unfortunately as time ticks away, you know, it just starts to. It's funny, the public, as much as we try to explain how our business works, the public often doesn't comprehend what actually goes into making our shows, you know?
I know.
So, like, I had a subscriber email me yesterday and say I had to call her and I had to tell her when we were going to start again because she has friends coming in from out of town and she needs to make sure she gets those tickets. Well, you know, she said, well, they said that they might open up the country May 1st. I said, well, they said they might. And even if they do, you know, there's still going to be social distancing. And then if it's June 1st or June 15th, she said, well, can't you just put one of your old shows on? And I'm like, I'm not sure what you mean by that. And she said, well, why don't you just do one of the shows you had last year? Then you could just start right away. I'm like, no, that's not how that works.
We'll just put that together.
Yeah, we need 3 weeks to make the show happen.
Right.
Which starts to make it less and less likely. Still holding out hope because unlike year-round theaters like the Fulton, we have those 12 weeks of performance, 16 weeks in, you know, total in production, but actual only 12 weeks of performance there on the campus of Bowdoin College to try and make it happen. And it is, the window is tightening, the noose is tightening quickly.
Are you guys going to be okay, though, up there? Can you get through this?
We will get through. We are blessed. We are in a community very much like here with the Fulton. Our community is incredibly supportive of us. I think the thing that is most hurtful to my soul is the fact that 62 years ago, Victoria Crandall started that theater, a woman in 1959, but in her 50s. And ever since it opened, it has been a fantastic training ground for some of the highest level theatrical professionals in the world. And the list of our alumni is staggering when you look at it, and not just in theater, in higher echelons of Fortune 500 companies, and obviously theater and movies and television are our most famous alums. But the fact that this year's crop of kids are not going to, at the very least, are not going to get the same experience breaks my heart. And we have a unique system there. We have interns, apprentices, journey persons, and a ton of union professionals. And it's that combination. Mark used to comment on it when he first started working up there. It's that combination, the interns and their hunger for the business, and the union professionals with their experience, and the combination of those two things creates a magic every summer that is, it's palpable, truly. And in our area, we are the largest provider of that thing that we call theater. And to be able to go an entire year without it will be very, very painful if we indeed don't get to have a season.
Well, my hopes are with you, Guy. I hope it gets to be something.
Thank you.
And
we've got to get you up there, Ed.
I know. I was thinking that I got to get up there.
Beautiful.
I really
It's a stunning campus. The campus of Bowdoin College is breathtaking. I always say that we win before they even see the show, because they get out of their cars and they see a stunning, glorious Bowdoin College campus. Then they look at our Pickard Theater, and it's a stunning, stunning facility. So I say, as long as we can produce even a remotely good show, we will win this battle, and we do usually. But I hope to God we get to give them something this year, but we'll see.
And Mark, you're thinking August, correct? Later.
Yeah, I'm thinking August. I as you know, I just sent out this, this video yesterday or the day before to because so many people are like, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? And you want to be able to give them something. Silence is the worst thing in the world.
Exactly.
Sometimes even breaking a silence with, we're doing something negative, at least they've got an answer.
Right.
And as I'm sure you have, I know you have, we're all trying to just look to the future, because it's the only way to get through the darkness of what all this is to try to find a point out there that you can get to. So yes, our current plan, Kinky Boots, gosh, Ed, you've done a million shows as well as I have. Every now and then you do a play that changes you or gives you the opportunity to remember why you're part of the human race. And sometimes you then get to put that on for your community,
Right.
in the hopes that it's going to help them change the human race, And there's not a lot of them. Well, Kinky Boots, from the minute I saw it in New York, I was like, I have to be involved in this some way, someday. And doing that show here and having the response to it, and to have, our audiences literally hoarse from screaming and jumping up to their feet, and just the joy, and to have that be the show that I had to close.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, tore out my soul in ways I didn't even think was possible, and Jane, who, my God, thank God for Jane Hollahan in our community, because of her voice and her support of everything that she does for all of us. But she asked me a question for that interview about, how are we dealing with this crisis? And she said, did the cast cry? And they did, but they weren't crying because they were sad they were out of a job. They were crying because they knew that the show that was so important was losing its voice. Does that make sense?
They didn't get to tell the story.
Perfect sense.
So we were, we worked with the rights houses to say, hey, listen, at the time, which is now a month ago, we thought if we planned for August, because at that point people were like, hey, this might be this or this. August seemed like a really good plan, and it still does. But as everybody knows, as they're listening to this, when you air this, the whole world changes every single day. The facts change every single day. The rules change every day. And if the rules change enough that we can't open in August, well, then we're going to have to come up with a new plan. Yeah. My husband, who has been far better at this than I am, as far as being on every call that you can be on with the National Alliance and other arts organizations.
We're lucky. He gets to be on some, I get to be on others. We get the information of both calls.
Right. He was on one recently where, they're using verbiage of, well, what happens if theater can't open until the fall of 2021? I hear that I'm like, oh my God, what happens if we can't? Well, then what happens is the people that are passionate about the arts and that are running the arts organizations then figure out how that plan is going to work. And that'll keep us out of the darkness and moving toward, the sort of light of possibility.
Right.
So right now, our plan is to open in August. We've been lucky enough to be granted permission to change all the dates and not lose any of our shows. But that doesn't mean it's going to stay that way. So today, I'm guardedly optimistic that in some fashion we can.
That is, though, unfortunately, the other part that the public a lot of times doesn't comprehend is it isn't just our decision. I joked about my subscriber, but it isn't just our decision. There are rights houses involved, unions involved, all of those things. So people that think they have a simple solution to this problem, and why haven't we thought of that? We have. We've gone through every possible scenario. We literally spend 10 hours a day going back and forth with scenarios about how we might be able to make one thing or another thing work. And every theater you're doing it. Every theater in the country is doing it.
Yeah.
There just are not the answers that we're looking for in many of the scenarios.
Not to mention, quite honestly, we're all in, even you and I, Ed, are in a different boat dealing with this because of the demographic you're in, the size of your building, the size of my building, the size of your subscribers, the size of my subscribers, what you've already taken in a subscription, what I've already taken in a subscription.
Right.
Then I'm married to a man who we are dealing with the exact same crisis, but we have two completely different theaters. So he's listening to me make plans for the Fulton going, I can't believe you're doing that. I'm listening to him think about plans for Maine State thinking, how are you going to do, it's the weirdest thing until you finally go, you know what? Every single arts organization is going to have to handle it separately. And my only advice to them is to make sure that they're keeping their community's health
Right.
first priority.
Right.
And not the organization's wealth as the first priority. They have to be in tandem.
Yes.
But the second we start going, oh, well, I have to get Kinky Boots back up and running because I personally think it's the most important show. Well, then we're losing sight of what's important.
Right. Because we have to take into account that in our business, we have like every night hundreds of new guests coming in. We have to care about their health.
Right.
It's not just we meet at the theater, we're all 50 feet up. I mean, and as well as I do, once we start loosening restrictions, we're going to be at the bottom of the list. Get the gatherings. It's going to be a gradual thing.
Yep.
And we're even thinking about, if we're allowed to open by X amount of people, do we have to seat people apart? Will we be able to sell as many tickets as seats, or are we going to have to put distance between people? I mean, there's a lot of things that we're...
Well, and then you have to look at that and say, at the end of the night, then, how far in the hole are we? Because if we can only sell tickets 6 feet apart, that reduces our number of tickets. We can't afford to do the show.
Not to mention the audience's experience. I mean, how many times have you had the conversation of when a cast comes out and sees a packed house,
I know.
and they do their job, and that entire sound rushes over them.
It's the audience
versus
50% of the experience. 50%
exactly right.
of the experience.
So
there are shows that some nights don't work and other nights are a success because of the nature of they become one animal. The audience becomes one animal, and it's the success of the show is up to them.
Right. So if if those restrictions come into being, let's say, and we put them upstairs in the Groff series, which means we could be doing shows for 20 or 30 people maybe.
Yeah.
Spread out. Okay, that might actually help. That might help. It might actually happen because it's a small room, it's a small space, and we're not doing those shows up there to have packed audiences or to make money. We're doing them up there to have the conversation. You know what I'm talking about.
Yes, yes.
But imagine if I can only have 161 people in 3 stories of the Fulton.
Yeah.
What kind of an experience is that for the people that are coming? So it's hard. It's hard. Yeah. But you know what? We're going to face each challenge as the new information comes to us, while we spend our 10 hours a day planning. Okay, if this happens, what is that?
Well, I'm hoping for August too. I did 3 plans, and July, which is a fairy tale, and an August, which is optimistic but hopeful, and a September. So, and we'll see, so we have 3 plans. Unfortunately, because we're dependent upon a lot of kids going back to school for our casts, being the community theater, we can't do the entire series. We're going to lose 2 shows. But one show I'm going to put next year. I'm going to lose Hedda Gabler, but I also have to think, when this is over, what are our audiences going to want? They're going to come when they're finally released from this emotional prison. They're going to want life-affirming stuff, I think.
Which is why I'm so committed to doing everything I can to keep Kinky Boots as the thing that's going to reopen the theater. Yes. Because if we had done half of the run of Kinky Boots. We could have just closed it and then gone on with whatever the next show is. But honestly, after 5 months of being sequestered, is the first show you want to see out of the gate Titanic?
No.
Even though it's a gorgeous play, and we will do it. But seriously, I don't think people want to go and see Titanic first. And Kinky Boots is that. It is life affirming.
Yeah.
but it's hard.
People got to. I'm hoping we can all open in August. Now, you say you're doing some really great stuff, Mark, for the community. Could you tell us what you're doing as far as what the Fulton is helping the community?
We're, you know, a question was asked by one of our board members because she works with hospitals. Hey, do we have any of the equipment that the hospitals need that the hospitals could possibly use if needed? And it was like, wait a minute, we don't, but if we did, that's the perfect thing for us to do. We could, because right now we're not building sets, you know, we could actually turn our shop into a place to generate these materials. And thanks to an unbelievable donation by Ed and Jeannie Arnold, we were able to order, and one of them actually arrived yesterday, the two biggest pieces of equipment that we'd have to have in order to make the medical face shields. One is a laser cutter, and one is a 3D printer, which will actually allow us to make, you know, professional grade masks that can be worn, you know, in any situation. And then our costume department right now is reaching out to all of our stitchers, and I've applied for some funds so that we can have the materials covered, because obviously right now with being shut down, I can't spend money, but I can certainly try to raise it and then take our staff to execute it. So we're almost there. We will be able to buy the Tyvek cloth, which is what you need in order to make hospital gowns that can actually be used in a hospital. And we're working with some local organizations to provide hospital gowns and these masks for nursing homes and our first responders and our volunteer firefighters and our police. Wow. And our volunteer police and our hospice. And right now, most of the federal stuff is going directly to the major hospitals.
Right.
But what about, you know, that private organization that is like the third building over? So the Fulton is committed to try to make, we think between 700 and 1,000 masks, and the same with the gowns, so that when our crisis point hits, which the models are showing is sometime, you know, in the next 4 or 5 weeks, that we will be able to participate. And it's a great way for us to focus on what we can do to give back. And like I said, you know, in that release yesterday, we, and you know this too, Ed, because you run a non-for-profit and so does my husband, you know, we spend all year asking for people to help us. If there was ever a time for us to be able to say, how can we help back? What can we do for you? Even if it's our subscribers, you know, if it got to the point where everybody's fully stocked and we have this stuff, you know, I have reached out to Deneen, our mayor, and I've made it clear that I want, you know, our mayor's office and her to be able to control whatever we're doing, because I want there to be sort of one-stop shopping, right, so to speak, even though none of this is for sale. You know, this is all, but I don't want this to be a sort of pandemonium, right. And I want to serve the needs that she feels are most important, right. Because I respect her immensely, and I think that what she's doing for our community is exceptional. So that's what we're doing, and we're going to continue doing it as long as we can or have the resources to, in an effort to give back.
Another thing I like what you said really is the three Gs? Was it the right. 3 Gs? I love that. So can you repeat that, the 3 Gs?
Sure. Curt and I were talking at the dinner table because we had both cooked food. And we were talking about, you know, the uniqueness of what our experience is now as an arts organization that can't produce art. And I said to him, you know, casually, well, this is our opportunity, you know, to give back and to give hope. And later when I was thinking about it, I was like, you know what? It's also to give thanks. And I sort of ruminated on it. And that's where the 3 Gs came from. It's to give thanks, you know, for the opportunity to be in a place that supports the arts and to have loved ones and colleagues. It's to give back as much as anybody can in this time, even if it's just reaching out to your neighbor, and then to give hope, because you know me, you know Curt, you know you. We're not the type that buy into the darkness. So I kind of feel like it's up to us right now to share as much of the brightness as we can. So I've asked my staff to adopt this philosophy of, you know, give back, give thanks, give hope. And they've been so supportive, and I had somebody call in after they saw the video and say, do you mind if I use that as part of my sermon? I was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? The most flattered thing on the planet. And if more people can sort of adopt that as a philosophy.
That was me, and so I say it to him every day.
It's great, and he preaches, it's awesome. But if more people can adopt that, it will change your view from focusing on what we don't get to do, what we can't have. And we can't do this anymore. Well, we can do this. So yeah, give thanks, give back, give hope.
Yeah,
we're going to have to do that because there are people that don't possess that ability for themselves.
Right.
And theatrical artists, that's what we give the world, is we reflect what's going on and find ways to dig out of it and move forward. And so that's going to be our job for the next X amount of months.
I did get some negative feedback on that because somebody said to me that they felt that it was wrong for me to preach from a pulpit of power. Obviously in the theater, there's bragging about the fact that they have resources that others don't, but more importantly, people have to go through their process, and who am I to tell them that they can't? So I want to say on this forum, all we're trying to do is inspire people to find ways so that they don't have to go through the darkness. But that's not to negate that all of us have a process. And if your process needs to take you to a dark place, as my mother would say, mazel tov, do it. Have a good time. Do what you need to do. I just know that Curt and I had a conversation when I started to think about the other path, because some people we know are going to get this virus, they're going to get sick, and they're going to die. And if that's one of us, I'd rather spend my last week on earth being with smiles and being happy and trying to find the positive, because if I don't get the opportunity to do that last week, well, then I've lost 2 weeks left of my life. And I'd rather live every minute to the fullest. But that's not to say that, the Fulton is taking for granted, or Maine State Music Theater, or you, or Epac, or anybody else that is in a position to have a plan. Because I know that there's people out there that aren't in a position to even have a plan. It's going to close them down. It's not meant with any disrespect. It's meant with the hope that the arts in our community will stay alive because of the decisions that Ed Fernandez and Marc Robin and Andrea, at AMT, and Curt Clark and his community are making to try to provide a way to get past this so that we can gather again and celebrate the arts.
Well said. Well said. Before we wrap up, let's do something fun. Okay. Because there's so much heavy stuff.
Would we be scared?
No. I just want you guys to talk about. There you are. You're back.
Sorry.
Give me each of you give me two examples of what you've done in your theatrical lives that you are most proud of, and two that you wish never happened or you don't want to think about. And be honest.
Okay, I'll go first because he's always slow on this game.
Okay.
Two things that I'm most proud of, and I'm just going to talk in sort of recent history because, it's the same as you. What am I going to say? The two things that I'm most proud of are here. I'm going to just keep it locally, right? Is Hunchback of Notre Dame and Kinky Boots. Those are the two things that I'm most proud of from a theater artist at the Fulton Theatre because of doing things I never thought we could do, or the programming of it. And the two things that I'm least proud of in my career is harder to say because that when you talk about it from a directorial standpoint, then people that are involved in your production will think that somehow it's their fault. But I don't think I did my artistic best when I did Legally Blonde a few years ago, because I don't feel that I led my team the best, and as a result, it wasn't the finest. And I actually was incredibly disappointed in myself. A few years ago, I did a one-man production of I Am My Own Wife. Not I Am My Own Wife, from Santa Land Diaries.
Okay.
Santa Land Diaries. And I I think that was definitely not my finest effort, because I didn't apply the same set of expectations on myself that I did on everybody else. And when I went back and looked at some footage of that recently, I was like, wow, you really were selfish. You put yourself on that show because you wanted to do it, and you shouldn't have cast you. So that's mine. I turn it over to you.
I'm gonna break it up. I think one of the things that I'm most proud of at Maine State Music Theater is the ability to stand upstairs in the balcony and watch an entire audience just devouring whatever show it is that we're producing. And nothing gives me greater joy than that. My goal at Maine State is, I'm going to use a swear word, but oh well. My goal at Maine State Music Theater is always to have people walking out of a theater saying, how the hell do they do that in Brunswick, Maine? And there are certain shows that, let's say I try to watch the first 5 minutes of, and 45 minutes later, I'm at intermission and I should go home and get some sleep, but I still stay and watch the second act because I can't miss the enjoyment that the audience is getting from it, and realizing that we're giving them that. And that is just, that makes me so happy. As an actor, I would say that the two shows for me are Music Man and Les Mis, for me, are the two shows.
Yeah.
And then the things I'm not going to say least proud of, because I actually loved doing this show, but the review years ago, I was doing 110 in the Shade as Bill Starbuck. And the review came out, and the review said that Curt Dale Clark's performance as Bill Starbuck in 110 in the Shade was like watching Ethel Merman doing a Samuel Beckett revival. And here's the scary part, Ed. Here's the scariest part. Mark had to tell me that wasn't a good review.
It said that his entrance upon the stage was
Curt Dale Clark's entrance as Bill Starbuck is like Ethel Merman
entering a Samuel Beckett play.
Oh my God. It's funny. I'm going to say this because you just quoted that. It's so funny about actors. I can't tell you a good review. Like, I can say, yeah, I got good reviews for that. But a bad review, I can remember from 30 years ago, word for word. Word for word.
My worst bad review was, if Phoenix Theater spent any money at all to hire guest director Marc Robin, they spent too much.
Oh, Lordy.
And Michael Mitchell, because I was working for Michael said, oh, don't worry about it. You know, it was Nonsense Jamboree, country music jamboree. You know, he's like, what do you expect him to say?
Danny Goggin, we love
you, Danny. It wasn't about you. We swear to God.
Oh, God. All right. Well, guys, it was wonderful. Thank you so much. It was wonderful chatting with you guys.
Thank you for including us. You're a god, Ed, and we're so appreciative to have you.
And when this is all over, we've got to do this face-to-face sometime, okay?
Please.
Absolutely. Love you, Ed.
Love you. Here's
Thank you,
hope
friend.
you get back to work.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.